What would you do if the night before your dream wedding, everything you believed in shattered in a single moment? A woman about to marry the love of her life walks in on a betrayal she never saw coming. That woman was Lena Caldwell, a rising star in San Amador's high fashion scene. Tonight, she stood alone in her softly lit apartment, surrounded by the scent of gardenias and candlelight, her wedding gown glowing in the corner like a silent witness to her dreams. Tomorrow she was supposed to become Mrs. Whitmore. The dress, the flowers, the venue, it was all ready. Every detail perfect. But something didn't feel quite right. Daniel, her fiancé, had been distant, distracted. Just work, he kept saying. But her instincts whispered otherwise. So, she decided to follow her heart. To surprise him at the place they were meant to build a life together. What she found changed everything. She slipped on her coat, her heart fluttering with anticipation, and stepped into the electric rhythm of the city. Traffic rumbled, on signs blinked. The night pulsed with possibility, but all Dushyant could think about was him. She reached the building, took the elevator to the top floor, and unlocked the door with the key they had picked out together. The scene that greeted her ripped the ground from beneath her feet. In the living room they had lovingly decorated, where every pillow and painting had been chosen together, stood Daniel. But he wasn't alone. He held another woman in his arms, laughing softly Fula as she leaned into him. Not just any woman. It was Marin Caldwell, Lena's younger half-sister. Marin's laugh rang out, like glass shattering, her long auburn hair cascading over Daniel's shoulder as if it belonged there. Daniel froze when he saw Lena, his face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came. Marin turned slowly, a smirk dancing on her lips. "Oh, Lena," she purred. "You're early." Lena's chest constricted. Her breath caught. Every nerve in her body screamed to run, to scream, to do something, but she couldn't speak, couldn't move. The room twisted around her. She stumbled back. The image of them burned into her mind like a scar. Without a word, she turned and fled, her heels clicking furiously across the floor, echoing behind her as she ran out into the sharp winter night. The cold slapped her cheeks. Tears blurred the city lights, but she couldn't stop. Everything she believed in, every tender word, every memory, was now a lie. Eventually, she found herself at a sleek rooftop bar overlooking the skyline. The kind of place where the powerful shared secrets over $1,000 cocktails. She slid onto a stool, hands trembling, as she ordered something strong, anything strong. The bartender wordlessly poured a whiskey. She drank it in one go, welcoming the fire down her throat, a distraction from the deeper burn. She stared into the amber depths of her glass, her mind spinning with betrayal. How could he? How could Marin? Her own sister? A man sat down at the bar beside her. He didn't say anything at first, just the kind of quiet presence that demanded attention without asking for it. Dark suit, slate eyes, calm, collected. "Rough night?" he asked, voice low and steady. Lena didn't look at him. "You have no..." Idea, she murmured, reaching for another drink. He extended a hand with practiced grace. I'm Julian. His name was Julian Vance, CEO of Vance & Co., one of the most influential fashion empires in the country. Lena had heard of him, his name floating in and out of industry conversations, but never expected to meet him in the dim haze of a rooftop bar after her life had imploded. At first, their conversation drifted small talk that didn't ask for anything. But slowly, her walls cracked. And when they did, everything poured out: her heartbreak, her rage, the humiliation that still clung to her like smoke. I want to hurt them, she confessed, her voice breaking. I want them to feel what I'm feeling. Julian didn't flinch. He simply listened, his face unreadable, then leaned in with a quiet intensity that made her heart pause. I can help with that, he said. Come with me tonight. There's a gala across town. Be my wife for the evening. Let the city see you rise, not fall. Lena stared at him, stunned. The idea was absurd. She didn't know him. She didn't know what she was agreeing to. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, of empathy that made her nod before her mind could catch up to her heart. She didn't know why she trusted him, but she did. An hour later, Lena stood at the entrance of the Grand Haverly Gala, nearly unrecognizable in a black silk gown that hugged her like armor. Somehow, Julian had arranged everything: the dress, the invitation, the car. The moment she entered the ballroom, heads turned. San Amador's elite designers, investors, media moguls whispered behind flutes of champagne as cameras clicked like moth wings in the dark. Who is that with Julian Vance? Isn't that... Julian stayed close, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. A quiet anchor in the storm. Lena lifted her chin and smiled. She imagined Marin and Daniel hearing about this by morning, and for the first time since that night, a small spark lit inside her chest. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about taking herself back. And little did she know, that moment would change everything. The next morning, Lena woke in a guest room filled with light. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of the bay. Soft linen sheets, abstract art on the walls. This was Julian's penthouse, luxurious, modern, and stunningly impersonal. Her head ached, not just from the whiskey, but from the whirlwind she had willingly walked into. She slipped on the robe left at the foot of the bed and stepped into the living room. Julian was already there, perfectly composed in a slate gray suit, sipping coffee like he had all the time in the world. "Good morning," he said, gesturing toward a tray of breakfast. "I hope you slept well." Lena sat across from him, clasping her hands to keep them from shaking. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Last night, you didn't even know me." Julian paused, then set down his coffee. "Because I saw someone who needed a way out," he said. "And truthfully, I needed one too." He explained quietly. His words were measured, but filled with something deeper: resentment, maybe. Frustration. He was the heir to Vance & Co., a company built by his father, Edgar Vance, a man who saw people as assets and nothing more. Julian had been promised a arranged to marry Charlotte Breyer, the daughter of a rival powerhouse. Cold, calculating, and perfectly bred for the role of corporate wife. "I can't stand her," he said, eyes darkening. "And my father doesn't care. To him, she's a merger, not a person." Lena sat in silence. His pain, while different, mirrored hers. They were both trapped in roles written for them by others. Then came the offer. "Stay with me. Pretend to be my wife a little longer. It'll keep Charlotte and my father at bay. And it gives you something too. Control, visibility. A way to show Daniel and Marin that you're not broken." Lena hesitated. The idea was ridiculous, dangerous. But as she pictured Marin's smug smile, Daniel's silence, the ache in her chest softened into something else, resolve. "What's in it for me?" she asked, voice steady. "Other than revenge?" Julian's lips curved, the first crack in his calm exterior. "A fresh start," he said. "A job. You're a designer, so, right? Come to Vance & Co. Show the world what you can really do." It wasn't just an offer. It was an opening. She reached across the table, their hands at a handshake. A deal, sealed in quiet defiance. The handshake had felt strangely formal. But as days blurred into weeks, Lena Caldwell began to settle into her new life, her new role. At Vance & Company, Julian made good on his word. She was given a corner office with panoramic views of the San Amador skyline, and a small but talented team to bring her sketches to life. She worked like a woman reborn. Sketching deep into the night, she poured her soul into her design's gowns that danced between elegance and rebellion, each one stitched with a quiet defiance, a reclamation of self. Pencil strokes became therapy. February became her armor. Julian often stopped by, leaning casually against the doorframe with a cup of coffee in hand. "You're good," he said one evening, holding up a sketch of a flowing black dress with silver embroidery. "No better than good." Lena blushed. Praise still felt foreign after months of invisibility and betrayal. "Thanks," she said softly, catching his gaze. There was something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, a warmth that softened his usually composed expression. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Business talk gave way to shared vulnerabilities. One night, as they sat on his penthouse balcony under a sky sprinkled with stars, Julian opened up. "My mother, Grace, was everything to me," he said, his voice low, steady. "She loved beauty music, painting, life itself. But my father..." He paused, jaw tightening. He had an affair. When she confronted him, he made sure she wouldn't speak again. Called it an accident. I was 10. Lena's breath caught. I saw the wreckage, the blood. I couldn't save her. She reached out, placing a hand gently over his. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, heart aching for the boy he once was. Then she told her own story. "My mom died when I was 9. Cancer," she said. "My dad remarried less than a year later. Eleanor Pierce. Then came Marin. She let the name settle in the air. I tried to love her, But she always saw me as competition for Dad's attention, my career. And now, Daniel. Julian's hand tightened over hers. You're not alone anymore, he said simply. Those words lingered between them, around them, like a quiet promise. Their bond deepened in small, quiet ways. One afternoon, he surprised her with a delicate silver necklace, its charm a tiny star. It reminded me of you, he said, clasping it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, and something shifted. Another evening, they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, watching the sky melt into pink and gold. Lena felt something stirring inside her, a longing she couldn't quite name. She wondered what would it feel like to kiss him, to let this performance become real? But doubt crept in. Was this still pretend? Could she trust anyone again? The line between truth and fiction blurred more with every passing day. At a company gala, Julian introduced her as my wife, with such quiet conviction that even she believed it for a moment. People offered congratulations, toasts, smiles. She played along, her arm linked in his. Later, across the crowded room, their eyes met, and he smiled. Not the polished, public smile, a real one. Gentle, Lena's heart fluttered. For the first time since everything fell apart, she felt seen, safe, valued. But beneath the growing connection, questions brewed. One night, seated by the fireplace with glasses of wine between them, she asked, "What are we doing?" Julian didn't answer right away. Then quietly, he said, "Whatever this is, I don't want it to end." The illusion cracked when the past walked through her door. Daniel Whitmore appeared unannounced at her office, his face gaunt, eyes rimmed with regret. "Lena," he began, "I made a mistake." She stood frozen behind her desk. "Marin, she manipulated me, but it's always been you. Please give me another chance." His voice trembled, her heart didn't. Old memories surged to picnics in the park, shared dreams, whispered promises. But then she remembered Marin's voice. That smirk, the betrayal burned into her bones. "No," Lena said, calm but firm. "You broke us, and I'm not going back." Daniel's shoulders slumped as he left. No fight left in him. And as the door clicked shut, Lena felt something she hadn't expected. Not sadness, but relief. As the door clicked shut behind Daniel, Lena stood in silence, the weight of years finally lifting from her shoulders. She turned and found Julian watching from the hallway. He said nothing, but his presence said everything. That night, alone in her softly lit office, Lena sketched late into the evening. The only sound was the scratch of pencil on paper, her thoughts tumbling faster than her hand could move. Somewhere along the way, Julian had stopped being part of the plan and had become something more. Someone who saw her. Not the shattered version left behind by betrayal, but her. The real Lena. Strong, brilliant, whole. Her fingers drifted to the silver star, resting just below her collarbone. A quiet reminder of everything they'd built together. Of how far she'd come. Could this be love? She wondered. But outside their sanctuary, The world was stirring. Marin was whispering to anyone who would listen. Eleanor was lurking, watching from behind glassy smiles. And Charlotte Breyer? She hadn't made her move yet, but Lena could feel the tension in the air. It was only a matter of time. Peace had never been permanent. Weeks passed. Lena threw herself into her work at Vance & Company. Her designs were turning heads. Her name was gaining traction. Her office pulsed with energy fabric, swatches on one table, original sketches taped to the walls, interns rushing in and out with samples and edits. She thrived in the chaos. And Julian, he was always there, not hovering but present. A passing glance, a hand on her shoulder, a rare smile shared when no one else was watching. Their bond had become quiet but undeniable. Still, Lena kept her guard up. She couldn't afford another mistake, not with her heart. And then the storm broke. One crisp morning, Mariah Caldwell stormed into Lena's office. The designer heels echoed against the floor like one warning shot. She was to perfection. Eyes licking with something sharp and ugly. You think you can just walk into my life and take everything? She is throwing a folder onto Lena's desk. Inside, design documents, photos, legal drafts. That gown in Vance's winter collection. Maureen said, I made that. Lena's stomach dropped. Lena's. She recognized the design, a bold, geometric piece, now a highlight of the upcoming runway show. But it wasn't Marin's. Lena had drawn it months ago. Alone, in her old apartment, before this new life had even begun. This is a joke, she said, forcing her voice to stay calm. That's my work. Marin folded her arms, her smile cruel. Tell it to the lawyers. Eleanor and I are suing you for intellectual theft. Before Lena could speak, Marin turned on her heel and disappeared, leaving behind a wake of fear and rage. The fashion world devoured the story. Whispers trailed Lena through every boardroom, every showroom, every cafe. Clients hesitated. Colleagues exchanged glances behind her back. The buzz wasn't admiration anymore, it was suspicion. That evening, she marched into Julian's office, the city glowing behind him through the glass. They're trying to destroy me, she said, voice trembling, as she handed over the legal notice. Marin, Eleanor, they want me out. Julian read the papers, his jaw tightening. This is garbage, he said. I've seen your work. This sketch is yours. I'll take care of it. And he did. Within hours, Julian's legal team was activated. Some of Manhattan's most ruthless attorneys combed through the claims. It didn't take long. Timestamps, emails, and file history proved Lena's version predated anything Marin could offer. The lawsuit was dismissed in days. But the damage? That was harder to erase. Later, on Julian's balcony, Lena stared out at the skyline, a glass of wine untouched in her hand. I don't get it, she said softly. Why does she hate me so much? Julian stood beside her, his voice low. She's jealous, he said, of your talent, your resilience, your place in this world. You have what she wants, Lena, and she'll never forgive you for that. The words sank deep. Lena didn't respond. She didn't need to. She understood now that some people didn't want healing. They only wanted to see others bleed. And just as the air began to settle, a new name surfaced again. Charlotte Breyer. The next storm was already on its way. She arrived like a warning shot. Charlotte Breyer, tall, impossibly polished, with deep auburn hair and a stubble as sharp as glass, stepped into the Vance and Comey gala beneath a flurry of camera flashes and whispers. The moment she entered the ballroom, the energy shifted. Julian's father, Edgar Vance, had always intended Charlotte to be his son's bride, a union of power, pedigree, and legacy. And now, here she was, making her entrance like she owned the room. She approached Lena with practiced charm, her tone sweet but barbed. "So you're the famous wife," she said, swirling champagne in her crystal flute. "Julian's told me so much about you." "Quite the Cinderella story, isn't it?" Lena smiled, tight but controlled. "I'm here to work," she replied, "not to play games." But Charlotte wasn't one to be dismissed. A few days later, headlines began surfacing, anonymous sources, insider tips, and scandalous claims that Maren Caldwell had built her entire career by stealing other designers' ideas. The industry turned fast. Clients dropped her, sponsors vanished. Her name became a punchline overnight. Lena stared at the headlines in disbelief. She hadn't orchestrated any of this, but someone had. She found Julian in the boardroom, his expression grim as he scrolled through his tablet. "Did you do this?" Lena asked, holding up a paper with Maren's face splashed across it. Julian shook his head. "No, but I know who did. Charlotte, this is her calling card," he said. "Calculated, precise. She's sending a message to you." Lena's stomach turned. "She's destroying my sister just to get to me." Julian met her gaze. "She doesn't care who she hurts. She only cares about winning." That night, Maren called. Her voice was raw, accusatory. "You did this," she hissed. "You and your precious Julian. You couldn't stand me having anything, so you took it all. Maren, I didn't." But the call cut off. Lena stood in silence, her sister's fury echoing in her ears. She didn't feel guilt for Maren's lies, but she mourned the family they could have been. Eleanor's silence made it worse. Her absence didn't feel passive. It felt strategic. Through it all, Julian never wavered. He stayed by her side, his loyalty quiet but steadfast. One afternoon, as they stood reviewing fabric swatches, his hand brushed hers. "You're stronger than they realize," he said. "That's why they're afraid of you." Lena looked up, his words wrapping around something fragile inside her. "And you?" she asked, softly. "What do you see in me?" He hesitated, then answered, "One worth fighting for. Someone I'd save again, if I had to." The moment stilled heavy with something unspoken. And then, like a current breaking through still water, a memory surged. Waves. A cry for help. A strong hand pulling her from the undertow. 6 years ago, Lena said suddenly, her eyes wide. "Hampton Beach. That was you, wasn't it?" Julian nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You were drowning. I couldn't let you go." The truth hit her like a tide. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to feel like you owed me, he said simply. I wanted you to stay because you chose to. Before she could respond, a knock broke the moment. The door opened and Daniel Whitmore stepped in. Lena's breath caught. He looked tired, smaller than she remembered. Guilt etched into the lines around his mouth. What do you want? She asked, her voice cold. I just need to talk. Alone, he said quietly. Julian began to step back, but Lena raised a hand. No, she said, he doesn't get to control the room anymore. Daniel swallowed hard. I messed up, he said. Marin came on to me, and I was weak. I never stopped loving you, Daniel whispered, eyes pleading. Please give me a chance to make it right. Lena looked at the man who once had been her whole future. She remembered the soft laughter, late-night promises, his hand in hers as they dreamed aloud of the life they were building together. But that life, those memories had been stained by betrayal, by his choice to turn to Marin. You made your bed, she said, voice steady. Now lie in it. I'm done. Daniel's shoulders sagged, the weight of her finality settling over him. You've changed, he murmured, and then turned away, disappearing down the hall. When the door closed behind him, silence rushed in. Julian stepped forward, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. You okay? Lena nodded, though her heart thudded against her ribs. I will be, she said, locking eyes with him. Thanks to you. He smiled soft, rare, real. We're in this together now. The words felt like more than reassurance. They felt like a promise. But the storm wasn't over. Marin's humiliation had turned into something venomous. Eleanor had gone quiet, but her silence only made Lena more wary. And Charlotte's presence hovered, cool and calculated. Still, Lena looked toward Julian and found her strength mirrored in him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. What she couldn't know was just how far her enemies were willing to go, or what it would cost when the truth finally shattered the surface. The night of the Vance in Capoon Annual Fashion Gala arrived, an event that set the tone for the industry each year. Held in a glass-walled ballroom overlooking the bay, it sparkled with the presence of critics, designers, and San Amador's elite. Lena stood backstage, hands steady, as she fastened the final stitches on her signature piece, a flowing gown in midnight blue and gold, the fabric catching light like fire and shadow. This was her night, her moment to silence the whispers, to rise above the lawsuits, these the headlines, to show them all who she really was. Julian watched from the sidelines, his tailored suit fading into the shadows, his eyes never leaving her. When she looked his way, he gave her a quiet nod, just enough to settle her nerves. The lights dimmed, the music swelled, and Lena stepped onto the runway. The room held its breath. Her collection stunned a series of pieces that told a story of resilience, vulnerability, and power, each gown more daring, more breathtaking than the last. When the final model stepped off stage, the applause erupted like a storm breaking. Lena stood tall, the sound washed over her like absolution. But redemption, it seemed, came at a price. Backstage, still riding the high of her success, Lena turned and froze. Marin Caldwell stood before her, clad in a sleek black dress. Her presence was razor sharp, her eyes burning. "You think you've won?" she hissed, stepping forward. "You took everything from me, my career, my name, my place. I'm going to make you pay." Lena's pulse spiked. Marin. But before she could finish, Marin pulled a knife from her clutch. Gasps erupted from the crew nearby. Someone screamed. The blade gleamed under the stage lights. "Marin, stop," Lena said, her voice trembling but firm. "This isn't the answer." But her sister was past reason. She lunged, and time seemed to slow. Then out of nowhere, someone moved. A blur of motion, a body, between her and the blade. Daniel. He took the blow without hesitation. The knife struck his chest with a sickening sound. His eyes widened, and he staggered. Blood soaked his shirt as he collapsed into Lena's arms. "Daniel!" she screamed, catching him, lowering him to the floor. Her hands pressed over the wound, fingers slick with red. His breathing was shallow, pained. Their eyes met his, full of guilt, pain, and something heartbreakingly clear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. And the past came rushing back, not the betrayal, not the lies, but the boy she had once loved, the man who'd tried, too late, to do something right. "I loved you," Daniel whispered, his voice weak and trembling. "Always." Then his breath caught and stopped. His body went still in Lena's arms. For a moment, the world was silent. Then the room exploded into chaos, shouts, gasps, the distant wail of sirens. Security wrestled Marin to the ground as her wild laughter echoed off the walls, unhinged and chilling. Lena stayed there, frozen, tears slipping silently down her face as she cradled Daniel's body. His final act shattered something inside her. Guilt and grief crashed over her, sweeping away years of anger. She had hated him for his betrayal, for the way he let her break. But in the end, he had given the only thing he had left his life. Julian reached her side, dropping to his knees beside her. His hand found her shoulder steady, grounding. "Lena," he said gently, pulling her back as paramedics rushed in. She turned toward him, sobbing into his chest, as the weight of it all, of everything, crushed her. But the night wasn't finished with her yet. While security dragged Marin away, Charlotte made her move. In the confusion, she slipped backstage, her eyes locked on Lena like a predator circling prey. With a discreet signal to two hired men, the plan unfolded. It happened too fast. Rough hands seized Lena. Her arms were pinned. She fought, kicking, twisting. But a cloth pressed to her face drowned her cries. The world went black. She woke to silence. Dim light flickered above. The air was thick with dust and metal. She was bound, slumped in a chair, bolted to the floor. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city buzzed, but no one could hear her here. Charlotte Breyer stood before her, poised in designer heels like she was giving a presentation. "You've caused me a lot of trouble," she said, voice ice cold. She tossed a folder to the ground. Inside, legal documents. Transfer of Lena's shares in Vance & Company. If signed, it would hand everything to Charlotte. "Sign it," she ordered. and you walk out of here. Refuse, and you don't walk at all." Lena stared at her, defiant. "You're insane," she said. "Julian will never love you." "No matter what you do." Charlotte's expression cracked, just for a second. "He won't have a choice," she snapped. "Not when you're gone." Edwards already agreed. "He'll cut Julian off if he doesn't marry me." Lena shook her head, calm in her defiance. "I'd rather die than give you anything." Charlotte's hand rose, trembling with rage, ready to strike. But the crash of metal interrupted her. The warehouse door slammed open. Julian stormed in, fury etched into every line of his face. His security team followed, weapons drawn. "Let her go," he roared. Charlotte spun, desperation breaking through her poise. "Julian, this is for us. You don't understand." But he didn't even glance her way. He was already kneeling in front of Lena, untying the ropes, pulling her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice shaking. Lena clung to him, her whole body trembling. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You found me." Julian held her tighter. "I would tear this city apart to find you." Charlotte lunged, screaming, but she didn't get far. Security tackled her to the ground. Her voice faded as she was dragged away. Back at the penthouse, Julian paced the room, fury still burning in his blood. "My father threatened to disown me if I didn't leave you," he said. "He sent Charlotte to break us apart, to force my hand." Lena stood tall, her strength rising again. She reached for his hand. "What do we do?" she asked. Julian turned to her, resolve blazing in his eyes. "We fight," he said. "I have proof of fraud, tax evasion. Worse than you can imagine. I'm going to bring him down. But I need you beside me." Lena didn't hesitate. "I'm with you," she said, voice steady. "Always." Julian pulled her into his arms, gently pressing his lips to her forehead. It wasn't just comfort. It was a vow. Lena closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the quiet strength of his presence, the rhythm of his breathing, the safety in his touch. She thought of Daniel, of the man who had failed her, and then, in one final act, redeemed himself. His sacrifice had opened a door she never thought she'd walk through again. A second chance. And she wasn't going to waste it. But the battle wasn't over. Edgar Vance still loomed like a shadow, stretching over everything they were trying to build. Julian had defied him for her, and now they would face whatever came next together. Later that night, the fire crackled softly in the penthouse living room. Lena sat beside Julian on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, her fingers absently toying with the silver star around her neck. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this again," she said quietly. "Safe, wanted." Julian turned toward her, his gaze steady and intense. "You're more than wanted," he said. "You're everything to me." The words hung there, soft but solid, a bridge between all they had lost and everything still ahead. Lena leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. And for a few sacred moments, the chaos beyond the windows faded. But the danger hadn't disappeared. Marin's arrest hadn't silenced her rage. Charlotte's failure had only deepened her desperation. And Edgar the man behind it all, was still waiting for a moment of weakness. Lena knew the cost of this night. She had held a man as he died. She had nearly been lost herself. And though the wounds were deep, Julian's presence grounded her. Their love, forged in fire, was now their armor. Whatever came next, they would face it. The days that followed were a blur. Headlines buzzed. Rumors flew. But Julian and Lena kept their worlds small, holed up in the penthouse, plotting the next move. At the dining table, Lena spread out documents with calm precision. Julian paced behind her, phone to his ear, speaking in clipped tones to a team of lawyers, accountants, and investigators. The evidence was damning decades of tax fraud, offshore accounts, forged contracts, years of hidden corruption tied directly to Edgar Vance. "This ends now," Julian said as he hung up. "He won't control us. Not anymore." Lena looked up from the files, her voice firm. "We'll do this together." Julian crossed the room and took her hand. The touch, quiet but powerful. "Together," he echoed. Their pain hadn't disappeared. The grief was still there. Daniel's death, the betrayal, the fear, but so was something stronger. Now hope. And for the first time, it felt like they were finally stepping into the light. Julian didn't wait. Within hours, he leaked the files, everything, to the IRS, the FBI, and key journalists. No anonymous tips, no games. Just truth, clean and cold. That afternoon, every major news outlet across the country lit up. Edgar Vance, arrested for tax evasion, fraud. Screens flashed images of the powerful patriarch being led out of his Upper Westport estate in handcuffs. His face, a picture of disbelief and fury. Lena watched from the penthouse window, the city glittering below. "It's over," she whispered. Julian stood beside her, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "Not quite," he said. "There's still more to settle." Charlotte Breyer was next. After the warehouse incident, Julian's security team had turned her over to the authorities. The charges piled up: kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. There were witnesses, surveillance footage, and Lena's own testimony. The trial was swift. Charlotte, once the image of poised ambition, unraveled on the stand. Her polished composure cracked. Her desperation seeped through every word. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Guilty. Her sentence, multiple years behind bars. Later, Lena saw the mugshot on her phone. Charlotte's eyes were hollow, her expression vacant. A ghost of the woman who once thought the world owed her everything. "She got what she deserved," Julian said, his voice steady. Charlotte's trial had ended in conviction. Her prison sentence was long and without mercy. A woman who once wielded charm like a weapon had finally fallen on her own blade. Lena nodded, though a flicker of something stirred inside her. Not forgiveness, but sorrow. Not for the woman Charlotte had become, but for the person she might have been if hate hadn't consumed her. Hate had nearly destroyed them all. And Charlotte wasn't the last to fall. Marin Caldwell faced her own reckoning in court. The Bradley family, still grieving the loss of Daniel, pressed charges for his murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Her fingerprints on the knife, the surveillance footage, her unhinged statements at the gala. Lena sat in the back of the courtroom, her hands trembling, her heart heavy. This wasn't victory. It was tragedy, unraveling in slow motion. When Maren took the stand, her voice cracked with bitterness. "She drove me to it," she shouted, pointing at Lena. "She ruined my life. She stole everything, but the jury didn't believe her." Deliberations lasted less than a day. Guilty. Life in prison. Lena walked out of the courthouse in silence, the final echoes of her sister's downfall pressing like stone against her chest. A week later, the last ghost came knocking. Eleanor Pierce, Maren's mother, Lena's former stepmother. She stood in the doorway of Julian's penthouse, her carefully crafted appearance unraveling hair out of place, eyes sunken. "Lena," she said, voice cracked with desperation. "We're ruined. The Caldwell name it's nothing now. Please help us. We're still family." Lena stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "Then cold and clear family?" she repeated. "You turned my sister against me. You fed her hate. You tried to destroy me. You don't get to ask for help now." Eleanor broke. Her tears came fast and hard, but Lena didn't flinch. "Leave," she said, "and don't come back." Julian closed the door. And with that, the final piece of her old life was gone. With their enemies gone, Lena and Julian turned to healing. The past hadn't vanished. Daniel's death remained a scar on Lena's heart. The betrayal of her own blood still echoed in quiet, aching moments. But Julian's love, his quiet strength, was a balm she hadn't known she needed. One evening, with spring painting San Amador in soft greens and golds, Julian led her to the rooftop garden of the penthouse. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple, stunning, a single diamond catching the last light of day. "This isn't pretend anymore," he said, voice low, eyes fierce. "Marry me, Lena. For real this time." Her breath caught. She looked into his eyes and saw it all. The boy who had once pulled her from the water. The man who had stood by her through every storm. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of joy. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like forever. They planned something quiet. No headlines, no boardrooms, no battles. Oh, just the Hamptons, the place where their story had unknowingly begun years ago. A beach, a breeze, and the people who mattered most. On a warm June morning, Lena walked barefoot across the sand, her white dress flowing, her star necklace glinting like a secret blessing at her throat. Julian waited by the water, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, smile wide and unguarded. A small circle of friends stood nearby, laughter drifting like sea foam on the breeze. When it was time for their vows, Julian went first. He took her hands, voice steady but thick with emotion. "Lena, You came into my life when I'd forgotten how to feel. You brought light to places I had buried. You gave me strength when all I saw was pressure. I promise to stand beside you, to love you, to build a life where you will never again have to question your worth because I see it every day. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she looked up at the man holding her hands. "Julian," she whispered, her voice steady, her heart open. "You didn't just save me from the waves that day. You saved me from losing myself. You gave me hope when I didn't even know I needed it." A hush fell over the small gathering as she continued. "I promise to be your partner, your peace, your home through every storm and every sunrise." They exchanged rings as the waves crashed softly behind them, sealing their vows with a kiss beneath a sky brushed in gold and rose. Laughter rang out as Julian lifted Lena into his arms, spinning her on the sand. For a moment, the world held nothing but the sound of her joy, unfiltered, unguarded, alive. The sun dipped below the horizon, and with it, the shadows of everything they had survived began to fade. Later that evening, as the celebration gave way to quiet, Lena slipped away barefoot and alone toward a small, windswept cemetery nestled behind the dunes. There, among the flowers and seagrass, lay Daniel's grave, a simple stone, a name etched in silence. She knelt beside it, her fingertips brushing the cool granite. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, "for your final gift, for giving me the chance to live again. I won't forget you." A breeze stirred the trees above her, as if carrying her words out to sea. And with it, something unspoken, released, a pace she hadn't known she was still waiting for. Julian found her there, his footsteps quiet on the grass. He didn't speak. He just knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her back. They stayed like that, still and silent, letting memory and healing breathe in the same space. When Lena finally stood, she reached for his hand, their fingers naturally finding one another. "Let's go home," she said. Julian nodded, his smile soft. And together they walked back to the place. They now shared a beach house filled with light, second chances, and the kind of love that grows slowly and stays. The days that followed were not grand. They were quiet, peaceful. Lena woke each morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of pencils scratching across sketch paper. Sometimes they worked side by side. Sometimes they just walked the shore in silence, letting the waves do the talking. Vance & Co. thrived under their united vision. Lena's bold, heartfelt designs, earning critical acclaim, while Julian's calm leadership guided the company to new heights. They faced the world hand in hand, not perfect, but whole. One evening, as stars blinked into the sky, they sat together on their porch, bare feet up, wine glasses half full, the sea whispering in the distance. Lena leaned into Julian, her head resting on his shoulder. "We made it," she said, her voice full of quiet wonder. Julian kissed the top of her head, his arm tightening around her. "We did," he said, "and we'll keep making it, every day." The night stretched out before them, wide, soft, infinite. A sky full of stories still to be written. Lena closed her eyes, the ocean singing its lullaby, and knew finally, fully, that she had found her forever. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Through heartbreak and healing, through darkness and light, we've walked alongside Lena and Julian as they discovered the quiet strength of love, redemption, and starting over. If their story touched something in you, if it reminded you that even after the worst storms, the sun still rises, then we're deeply grateful. Until the next story, take care of your heart. You deserve the kind of love that feels like home. With all our thanks, the Shining Stories team.